Okay, there we go. Hi guys. Oh, technology is such a nightmare. I had to sort out a few things. So, let me start by saying, welcome to everyone that's new. So many new people came in the last 24 hours. It's a bit overwhelming. If it's the first time you're watching one of my live broadcasts, my name is Malaysia Jogyert. As you will see in my bio, I talk predominantly about narcissism, abuse, emotional growth work, and personal development. I am based in Cape Town, South Africa, and I really find that it's difficult to get involved in this conversation in this community specifically. So I'm glad to be able to finally reach the community that I've been trying to reach. You can comment. I can see some of your comments on the screen, so I'll try and answer them as they come along because the screen is over on this side. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So a few things I want you to note. I live in a very noisy space. So if there's noise upstairs or next door, my apologies. I'm just going to keep talking. I'm going to try and keep this live short because load shedding is supposed to happen at 8 and you never know what's going to happen. But then we're just gonna get into the topic. So if you don't know what's happening, there has been drama in Cape Town, y'all. So if you live under a rock, you probably don't know who Nadia Jaftha is. She's a famous influencer. Everybody knows who she is. She has won awards. And she's doing incredible work in the influencer space for herself. But I actually heard someone say earlier, there's a very big difference between someone who has influence and an influencer. Influencers are people who, live the type of lifestyles that everyone wants to attain. But I find that there's a very big difference between finding out who the person is versus what it is they do for money. Now, because of her fame, her family has subsequently become famous, which is her mother Nawal and her brother. And their fame has taken a completely different direction. I've seen some of their stuff over the last maybe year or two. I haven't really followed any of it because the conversations really are not meaningful whatsoever. So you'll see me look at my notebook. I brought my notebook because I took a couple of notes. So her brother's name is Tariq, and some of the stuff that he's spoken about and I've heard on and off for the last year can be pretty abusive. He's been very violent in the way that he talks to people online. And the problem with South Africa is we are so used to violence. We have normalized violence so much that we accept this kind of behavior. We share this kind of behavior and we help these people get further along with what it is they do. So what essentially happened was, he's married. He says he has 3 wives. I haven't seen any of the other wives, but this particular wife, her name is Danica, they call her Alicia as well. He's been with her for, I think it's 10 to 12 years. And on Tuesday, apparently, she escaped the marriage. She was speaking to a friend, Kathy, of hers for a couple of months, who was helping her try to leave. They went to an undisclosed location. He eventually tracked her down 24 hours later and brought her back home. And him and his mom, Nawal, have been doing these lives on TikTok. Now, there are a few crazy things happening right now, right? But the thing that I always find very curious about this is that nobody seems to see what the nuances of abusive people are. And I'm going to use the word alleged because I have no actual context to these people, but their behavior online is extremely telling. One of the things about the influencer space that we don't talk a lot about is many influencers have narcissistic traits. Now, most of us have narcissistic traits, and I'm going to use the word narcissistic and abusive interchangeably. Most of us have narcissistic traits, but dependent on the type of person we are, situations will vary depending on when we use those traits, right? Narcissistic people, unfortunately, don't vary. They have all of the narcissistic traits and they use it to control and abuse and manipulate people. This is just how they operate. They have no way of operating, number one, and number two, no other way. And number two, they never change. They don't have the ability to change because they don't believe that anything is fundamentally wrong with them. So that's the first place I want to start. The reason why Nawal and Tariq are going off on TikTok the way that they are is because they don't believe that anything that they are doing right now is wrong. And Tariq's behavior has started to become more and more abusive in nature. So that alone, without Alicia in the picture, some of the things that he said prior and some of the things that he says online without even thinking twice already is telling about the personality type. Now, I'm not going to call him a narcissist, but a lot of his behavior just doesn't make sense. So some of the things that really stood out to me, which I think people need to really be looking at, is number one, narcissistic people and abusive people usually have, and I did post this in the week, very sadistic relationships with their mothers. And what I mean is, because of the environment that they were brought up in, they kind of became so infatuated with their mother, right? This is sons in particular. They become so infatuated with their mother that there is no separation between them and their mother relationally, right? So their mother is essentially their wife, and everything that they speak to their mother about is things that they shouldn't be talking to them about if they are married, right? You're supposed to keep those things within your marriage. But the reason they do this is because they are trying to keep a level of, how can I say, toxic connection to this parent. It's because they were usually neglected as children, and that neglect forces them to be in a situation where they need to be constantly attached. But one of the reasons as well is they know and make sure that they protect themselves from being abandoned by their partners. And the only way to make sure they don't completely lose it is to constantly have this weird sadistic relationships with their mothers, right? And I'm talking about narcissistic sons here in particular. Now, the way that Nawal and Tariq communicate on TikTok, for me, is wild, because at no point does this woman stand up and call her son out for any crazy behavior. Like, she encourages his crazy behavior, which for me is a very big sign that something is wrong. Because someone who is able to think through normal quote-unquote behavior would be able to say to their son, well, some of the stuff that you said, I think needs to take, you need to reevaluate some of what you said. But they just keep coming on TikTok like it's the attention. The constant attention is what they come for. So one of the big things you need to know about abusive people is they will find every possible situation, people, funerals, weddings, birthday parties, every single situation to make it about them somehow. This is why they are flourishing on social media right now. They are loving it, because regardless of what kind of attention it is, it's attention, and they will do anything for attention. So the other thing that we really need to look at is Alicia's behavior. There are some things that I've watched her do on her lives that are really, really worrisome to me. Now, I did say in my post yesterday that she's not going to leave him. And there's a reason she's not going to leave him, and I'll explain that. But one of the things that concerns me is when they brought up certain topics, I watched her regress from actually further communicating what she felt. And when someone is really afraid to express where they are at mentally and emotionally in a situation, there's usually a certain level of manipulation and coercion happening, right? I'm afraid to express what I really think and where I am with this because I'm afraid that there's going to be backlash. Now, the reason I'm saying I'm going to explain why she won't leave is because abusers groom their victims, and the victims have no idea that they've been groomed and indoctrinated into the system of abuse. And they have to do this because at the end of the day, the victim needs to defend the abuser and be so enamored by them so that the abuser is protected. They know they don't have the ability to actually reason normally. They know this. They know that the way that they behave is not how healthy people behave. So what they do is set up a system around themselves to make sure they are protected. This is how the mother is important. This is how the partner is important. And in his case, this is why 3 partners who are both serving him financially and emotionally are important. He's got more than enough people to get narcissistic supply from. So if she's been with him this long, and if she came back after they went and he went and found her, she's been so indoctrinated that leaving him is scarier than actually staying, and she will not even be processing in that way. In her mind, she's doing the right thing. She's coming back and sticking with her family and doesn't understand, like Nawal said, why everyone is blowing this out of proportion. One of the biggest things that we never talk about is the fact that abusive people use the tactic and the phrase that you're blowing it out of proportion, because at the end of the day, they want to minimize what the victim is going through. As long as I can minimize what you're experiencing, you will not take the steps and the tools that are necessary to protect yourself, because I am in control, because I am the one who gets to tell you what happens here, and I get to manipulate you because you are essentially my toy. I get to push and pull you as much as I like, right? So in my opinion, Alicia's been a little bit wary about coming online, but one of the things that really worried me was she's coming on and off, and then a while says we need to take out an interdict, a protection order against your family. And I'm like, wait. First and foremost, she hasn't had communication with her family for how many years? The first thing that abusers do after they manipulate you and after they groom you into the narcissistic system is isolate you. Because as long as you've been isolated, nobody outside of the system can actually call out bad behavior. That way, they can continue to harm you in private and behind closed doors without anybody knowing any better. And the second you come to realize that something is wrong and want to say something, you're already in trouble because you've been so isolated that nobody can actually verify the things that you were saying, which is why people who come from abusive situations are not believed, because the abuser has made sure that they are in good standing with everybody, when in actual fact behind closed doors they are abusing you silently, right? Abuse doesn't start with violence. Violence is actually the last line. They have to manipulate you and bring your boundaries down so far that hitting you won't even get the right response from you. They actually teach your body and your nervous system how to behave in an abusive situation. So I'm watching Danica's behavior, right? I'm watching how the children are part of the situation. I'm watching how the children are being gaslit as they're explaining, Mommy was sad. How these children are also being manipulated in the system. One thing you must always recognize is abusers make themselves the center of the universe. They need to be the center of everyone else's universe because essentially their personality type means they haven't developed a sense of self. Their sense of self is attached to everyone around them. So him having 3 wives, I mean, that in itself says a lot. And the fact that he had the audacity to say that his wives take care of him financially, that is just the wildest thing to me. I saw one of the posts on the Women for Change. One of the ladies said that in the Muslim community, a woman's money that she makes is for her and for whoever she wants to give it to for charity. Her job is not to take care of the man, right? And this man is boasting that he's got the tattoo on his forehead, and at the same time, his 3 wives are taking care of him so he doesn't have to work. Narcissistic people are actually very good at leveraging off of strong, intelligent, and people who have essentially big purposes set up for them in their lives. They can snuff you out. They're not just picking anyone. Most people don't realize that they have an actual big calling and purpose in their lives, which is why a narcissist has come to track you down. They are watching you. They're watching you move, watching how you behave, and then while they're grooming you, they are actually checking what is important to you, what do you believe in, what do you love, and then becoming you. So it's not that now he's hitting her, oh, now he's an abuser. He's always been, because they do this with everybody that they draw into their circles. So one of the reasons I said she's not going to leave is the fact that she came on that live and tried to, how can I say, put out the fire in the little that she has said, says that the coercion, which is the manipulation to believe what they believe, even though internally her nervous system is telling her completely something different. She doesn't trust the nervous system. She trusts him more than she trusts herself. Because there's so much coercion and there's so much going on and there's so much chaos, like I said yesterday, she's not going to leave. Why would she leave? Let's also put this into context. We live in a country where abuse is rife, right? We know that we have one of the highest gender-based violence cases statistics in the world. The statistics the president showed this week is literally the bare minimum. The reason why it's the bare minimum is because the second point is we're not going to report these cases. And the reason we're not going to report these cases is because we're going to be gaslit and further harmed when we walk to the police station. The police doesn't care. Let's be honest. And they don't have the capacity to even understand how abusers work. So they just do whatever is their job, because actually saving people's lives is literally on a low priority list. And then thirdly, what most people don't become aware of is when you leave an abuser, they literally turn your life upside down. Your life is already upside down. They've created all of this chaos. They've taught you how to treat yourself. They've taught you how to treat them, and they've taught you that they are the center of your world, right? So now leaving them is not only painful for you, but it's destructive. And a lot of them turn to they become monsters. They've been monsters this whole time, but the monster reveals itself. And the reason why is the biggest issue with narcissistic and abusive people is that they have an abandonment wound. And the second you abandon them, then you see the true nature of who they are. So even if Danica was to wake up, and like everyone says, it would take a lot for her to get there. And the reason it would take a lot is because if you know what the word cognitive dissonance means. So essentially, you live with someone long enough where this is the narrative. This is what you believe is happening. You love them, so they must be honest. They must be all of the things you believe. You actually future fake. You build up this reality of what your life is going to be with this person. And then when you want to leave them, you find out, actually, that was a complete fake version of this person. They made up a fake version of themselves to keep me in the dark, right? That is very hard for our brains to deal with. It's very, very, very hard. And most people don't get over the cognitive dissonance, so they get stuck in that loop for many years after they get out of those abusive relationships. For the most part, many people get back into abusive relationships because they can't get past the healing part of cognitive dissonance. It's very, very difficult. Like your brain freaks out. Simple terms. Your brain just goes wild, right? It can't make odds or ends of what the truth is and what isn't the truth. So you try to find a safe version of the information you're receiving. So number one, that is the thing that will probably prevent her from really seeing the truth, even if people go to her. I really commend her family for trying to help. But what they've actually done, sadly, is further isolated her, because now he's going to make sure he completely cuts her off from everybody, including Kathy, who was just trying to help, right? He knows he's in trouble, so we need to further cut off these people, have no access to them, have no access to the children. You need to be where I can keep an eye on you. And what's going to further happen is the mistake that she's made now by going back is that he's going to watch all of her moves now. If he's not already watching her phone, apparently her phone was taken away at some point. If he's not already watching her online movements, he's now going to make sure that she can barely be in contact with anybody except his family. And I'm excluding Nadia from this because he attacked her as well. Because his family is helping him abuse her. They are essentially just helping the entire situation. The other reason she may not leave is because of the children. Apparently when she left, she only left with one of the kids. It's very, very difficult to leave your children behind. I've had to leave my children behind, and that was very, very hard to do because you're leaving your children, number one, in an abusive situation. You can't make odds or ends of what exactly is abusive and what isn't if you don't have the education, which you highly likely wouldn't. But also it's very scary to leave. He sounds violent and dangerous, right? Leaving him must be the scariest thing on the planet, even if she does come to it at some point. But right now, she's not ready. There's a reason why they say all victims go back to the abusers at least 7 times. Because you are caught in an abusive narcissistic system. You are addicted to this person. You are not just in love with them. They are putting you in a cycle, right? There's 4 things that happen in the cycle. I'll go into detail on that on another day. But there's 4 things that happen in the cycle and you become addicted to the cycle, right? They treat you well and they treat you really badly. And you're working very hard to make sure they're always treating you well, which will never happen because they are the center of their own universe. You're just feeding the dog what it wants, and you don't realize that, and neglecting yourself, your nervous system, and all of your needs in the process because you think you are doing the right thing, right? I don't blame her. For those of us who've been in the situations, we know what it's like, right? We know what it's like to be in that situation where you're like, he's gonna change. He's telling me he's gonna change. Things are gonna get better. It's not really abusive because he says it's not really abusive. Him telling me what he thinks of me and treating me the way he does can't really be abusive. But all of the signs are there. Like all of the signs are there. I really, really need to commend the people who've spoken up about this. There's going to be a lot of people coming out and having negative commentary about this because, number one, they don't understand. And a lot of the bullies are usually narcissistic. They don't want to be exposed. The one thing a narcissist does not want is exposure. The second you expose a narcissist, then his demon really shows himself, right? But what I suggest right now is that the narrative around this family continues to be spoken about, but we also need to really look at the fact that this is happening in every second household in South Africa. The fact that they are a famous family shouldn't be the only reason we are actually doing some real work and education on this. The education is a lot. So in a live, I can't give you everything that I saw. There are a lot of nuances just in the things that Tariq said, in the things that Danika's brother said, in the things that Danika said. Nawal she is living life off of this thing because they are getting exactly what they want. One of the things we need to stop doing is giving them attention. We need to stop giving them attention. I understand we're recording the lives on TikTok and all of that, but that's not going to prove anything. You have to realize our court systems are inundated. So even at a point where Danica feels she wants to speak up, because she already came on a live and said, no, she's fine, it's going to be very difficult to even put together evidence for this. The court doesn't have the capacity or the ability to defend someone in a situation like this. And secondly, like I said on my post today, if you don't have the money to go to court, you might as well just disappear because you're not going to matter at the end of the day. I am concerned, I'm not going to lie, I'm concerned mainly about the children. The fact that the children kept getting involved in this conversation and in the way that they are so nonchalant about involving their children in a conversation that should be happening behind private doors. One of the mistakes that I think is going to follow Nawal for a very long time is the fact that she went public about this. I know that Danika's brother went public first, but he came out of concern. And by this point, he was already concerned for 4 days that they weren't able to get hold of her. Nawal is being messy. She's being messy and disgusting about this whole thing. And honestly, that in itself, and a video that I actually saw yesterday of how she babies him, is very telling for how their relationship works. Her relationship with him is basically to serve her and him. Everyone else in the situation is just basically there to pamper them and give them the supply that they need. So I've said a lot of things. Let me just look at the comments because I see there are quite a few people who joined. I may have load shedding in 6 minutes, so if I do go offline, I am very sorry. Let me just see. I'm looking at comments on Instagram. Please, I'm going to save the live. Okay, only facts here, not lies go by without him speaking for her. Well, of course he's going to speak for her. You must remember, according to him, he's her God. He's her God. He gets to tell her how this goes. She can't think for herself. I've watched her step back. The part about him taking out a protection order on her family, I can just imagine what went on in her head. We don't know the insights for why she doesn't have a relationship, but I can guarantee you, based on the way that he's behaving, chances are very high that some drama happened and he was like, your family is like this, you shouldn't be speaking to them. They actually manipulate you into isolating yourself from your friends, your family, and from anybody who can save you if you need saving. And they're very clever about it. Now, this is the thing. Narcissistic people are very intelligent in the sense where self-protection takes precedence over everything. But that also means that they miss a lot of things. They miss a lot of things. And if we are wise enough in these relationships before we leave, we would educate ourselves on what it is they are missing and gather evidence in that area. Because you need evidence, you need money, you need a healthy support system away from the narcissist that they do not even know about and don't have contact with. Because that's the only way to healthily escape. That's the only way to get away and make sure that you're safe. You have to be calculated. And I hate the fact that I have to tell people this because it means that we have to become like them. We have to become like them to ensure that we're not going to die. We live in a country where people are dying at these people's hands every single day. And we are dumb to believe that, oh, he's not going to get that bad. Oh, they do. Oh, y'all, they do. They get worse than you can ever imagine. I've seen people shocked and floored that they were married to people who became complete monsters overnight. I've had family members who's died at a narcissist's hand and then shot themselves because we are naive enough to believe that it's not going to get that bad. It always gets that bad. It doesn't matter whether they're a vulnerable narcissist or a grandiose narcissist like he is. Sorry, my friend is just sending me voice notes. Claudia, you can't be sending me no voice notes while I'm on a live. But okay, I'm gonna sign out here. I'll probably do another live at some point. There's so much to talk about. My DMs are open. My email address is on all of my stuff. So if you want to talk a little bit more in depth of this, I've got some information that I speak to people one-on-one about. The lights may go off, so I don't want to just drop you in the next minute. But thank you for everyone who's joined. This is also going up on YouTube, so if you need to recatch it, watch it on YouTube. I'll share the YouTube version because Instagram doesn't allow me to share the live. But let's talk about this for real. Like, let's stop being naive and ignoring the fact that there's education parts that really need to happen here that's going to save thousands of lives, and all of us who know need to teach. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you on the next live.